The sky over Earth burned with alien fire. From the deserts of the American Southwest to the towering skyscrapers of Tokyo, the same terrifying scene played out. Enormous, obsidian-hued warships descended through the clouds, blotting out the sun with their sheer mass. Civilians looked up in horror as engines thrummed like distant earthquakes. They had come. For years, conspiracy theories, shadowy government leaks, and wild speculation about alien life had circulated in human society. But now there was no doubt. First contact was not peaceful. It was an invasion. The Tvar Dominion had arrived in force. It started in Earth's orbit, where humanity's feeble attempts at space defense were shattered within minutes. The United Nations Space Command, a coalition force built to defend against possible extraterrestrial threats, lasted a mere 32 minutes against the Tvar warfleet. Defense satellites were hacked, hijacked, or obliterated, and Earth's orbital stations were reduced to drifting debris. Then came the real invasion. Across every major continent, massive deployment crafts speared downward, igniting the atmosphere as they plunged toward their targets. New York, London, Beijing, Sao Paulo, New Delhi. The world's superpowers scrambled to mount a defense. Air forces were launched, missile defense systems activated, and ground troops mobilized. The full might of human military power was unleashed. But it didn't matter. The Tvar war machine was unstoppable. Their shields rendered Earth's weapons useless, their energy-based artillery incinerated entire battalions in seconds, and their biomechanical infantry units, creatures engineered for war, tore through human forces like they were insects beneath a boot. Within 48 hours, nearly every military in the world was in full retreat. Within a week, Earth's leaders gathered under white flags, sending an unconditional message to the invaders. Humanity surrendered. On board the Tvar flagship, High Commander Varkesh stood at the center of the Dominion war table, his four arms folded across his armored chest. The holographic projection of Earth flickered before him, glowing red with countless markers indicating conquest zones. "It is done," one of his lieutenants, Kortal, declared. "The Death World has fallen." Varkesh did not respond immediately. His yellow, reptilian eyes studied the projection. The Tvar were conquerors. They had subjugated over 200 species across the galactic core. Every time the pattern was the same: resistance, war, bloodshed, and ultimate victory. But this was different. Earth had surrendered too quickly. It was a death world, a classification the Dominion did not take lightly. The creatures that evolved on such planets were resilient, adaptable, and tenacious. They should have fought tooth and claw to the last breath. But instead, they had surrendered in a matter of days. Varkesh narrowed his gaze. "Something is wrong," he muttered. His words drew the attention of Talvek, the fleet's intelligence officer. "How so, Commander?" Varkesh exhaled through his nostrils. He didn't have an answer yet. Just a feeling. A deep, primal instinct honed from decades of war. "Humanity gave up too easily," he said at last. "No species goes from total war to surrender in mere days." Talvek's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Perhaps they saw the futility of resistance. Varkesh shook his head. Perhaps. But he didn't believe it. This conquest had been too clean. Too surgical. Something was missing. Something he couldn't see yet. But he would. With Earth's leadership officially submitting to the Dominion, the occupation phase began. Major cities were placed under direct Tvar control. Human governments were dismantled, and planetary governors from the Dominion were installed. Military bases were seized, their weapons and resources confiscated. A strict curfew was enforced. Any human found outside designated zones without authorization was executed. The Dominion expected resistance. That was normal. Even the most broken civilizations had remnants of defiance. The Tvar were ready for guerrilla warfare, insurgent tactics, and assassination attempts. But instead, there was nothing. The human population complied. Civilians walked the streets submissively, lowering their heads in the presence of alien patrols. The remnants of their armies offered no defiance. Even their scientists, their so-called intellectuals, accepted Dominion rule without protest. It was unnerving. Commander Varkesh monitored the occupation reports closely. Everything pointed to an easy transition of power. No hidden military strongholds. No rogue fleets waiting to strike back. No doomsday weapons activated in desperation. And yet he still felt uneasy. Then the disappearances began. It started as minor reports. A Tvar patrol squad missing in New Chicago. A communications officer failing to report in from Berlin. A supply convoy vanishing en route to Moscow. At first, the Dominion assumed it was rogue human resistance fighters. But there were no signs of struggle. No wreckage. No bodies. Just silence. Then things got stranger. Surveillance drones began malfunctioning en masse. Entire alien garrisons went dark overnight. When Dominion troops entered abandoned human military bunkers, they found them spotless, entirely devoid of dust or decay, as if someone had been maintaining them in secret. Varkesh called an emergency meeting. His officers stood before him in the war room, their faces tense. "This is not the work of random insurgents," he stated, his voice cold. "This is something else." Talvek brought up a holographic feed from a crashed SCI-FI patrol ship. It showed security footage from the final moments of the crew. The video was glitchy, distorted, as if something was interfering with the recording. But for a brief moment, Varkesh saw something that made his blood run cold. In the final seconds of the feed, a shadow moved across the screen, too fast, too precise to be human. Then the screen cut to black. Varkesh straightened. His heartbeat, slow and methodical, thumped heavily in his chest. "We did not conquer this planet," he murmured. "We walked into a trap." That night, in the depths of the abandoned tunnels beneath an old military base, a group of TFAR scouts made a horrifying discovery. They found a fully operational human military base. Stockpiles of advanced weapons. Dozens of automated defense systems. Highly classified data servers still active. And worse? Blueprints, plans, calculations. The entire surrender of Earth had been staged. It wasn't compliance. It wasn't submission. It was bait. A single message was found in a hidden encrypted terminal, still flickering on a screen. Phase 1 complete. Begin preparations. As the alien scouts turned to flee, the lights cut out. A single human voice spoke from the darkness. "You should have killed us when you had the chance." Then the screaming began. The first death was ignored. A single TFAR patrol unit in New Chicago, 28 soldiers, failed to report in. Dominion Command wrote it off as a simple communication error. But then a second patrol vanished in Berlin. Then a supply convoy in Moscow. Then an entire battalion in Hong Kong. No wreckage. No distress signals. No bodies. And that was when fear set in. The occupation of Earth had been smooth, too smooth. Humanity had surrendered quickly, offering no real resistance. The TFAR should have been celebrating a perfect conquest, another world added to their dominion. Instead, they were facing an enemy they couldn't see. And for the first time since the invasion began, High Commander Varkesh realized the war was far from over. Varkesh stood motionless in the war room of the Voraktal, the Dominion's flagship orbiting Earth. His reptilian eyes glowed in the dim hollow light as he studied the latest battle reports, or rather, the lack of them. His officers stood in tense silence, waiting for his reaction. They knew better than to speak out of turn. Finally, he turned to his intelligence officer, Talvek, and spoke, his deep voice like grinding stone. "What are we dealing with?" Talvek hesitated before responding. That alone sent a ripple of unease through the room. Intelligence officers never hesitated. "We don't know." Varkesh narrowed his gaze. "Elaborate." Talvek brought up a holographic timeline of the disappearances. First contact lost. Patrol 043 New Chicago. Vanished with all personnel. Next. A TFAR-controlled logistics center in Berlin was completely emptied overnight, but no security alarms were triggered. Then Moscow, a supply convoy's tracking signals blinked out simultaneously, as if they had never existed. In total, 760 Dominion soldiers and officers had vanished without a trace in the last week. Varkesh's claws tapped against the war table. "A primitive species does not do this," he growled. "They lack the technology. They lack the precision. And they lack the boldness." His second-in-command, Kortal, stepped forward, his own expression uneasy. "High Commander, we believe they are using our own systems against us." Varkesh turned sharply. "Explain." Kortal activated a security feed from a TFAR outpost in Hong Kong. The footage showed Dominion guards standing at their posts, until, suddenly, their armor systems powered down simultaneously. They barely had time to react before the lights cut out and the feed ended. That was disturbing enough. But then Talvek pulled up a transmission intercepted on Dominion encrypted channels. The hollow projector flickered and a human voice spoke, smooth and unhurried. "Your war is already lost. You just don't know it yet." Varkesh's second heart beat heavily in his chest. "They're inside our network," Talvek said, his mandibles clicking in anxiety. "The humans are accessing our command systems. They've been listening to everything." Silence fell over the chamber. This was not a rebellion. This was a coordinated, invisible war. And the Dominion was losing. The Tvar were one of the most feared warrior races in the galaxy. They did not fear battle. They did not fear death. But what they could not fight, what they could not even see, was something else entirely. The occupation forces began falling apart. Dominion warriors refused patrol assignments in areas where previous units had vanished. Tvar officers reported hearing whispers in their own language coming through their comm units. Weapons malfunctioned without explanation. Pulse rifles overheated. Combat armor locked up during battle. Soldiers began turning up dead in their own barracks, their throats slit, yet security footage showed no intruders. Paranoia ripped through the occupation ranks like wildfire. Even the most hardened warlords began questioning if they were truly alone in their command centers. The air felt too still. Shadows seemed to move on their own. The Tvar were not being fought. They were being hunted. Desperate for control, the Dominion enacted the Purge Protocol. Entire city sectors were locked down. No human was allowed outside without a Dominion escort. Suspected resistance members were publicly executed, their bodies displayed as a warning. Mass surveillance drones patrolled the skies, scanning every building, every alley, every shadow. For a moment it seemed to work. The disappearances slowed. The whispers stopped. The transmissions ceased. Then the counterattack began. It started with a hijacking. Dominion communication satellites were taken over simultaneously, broadcasting a message in perfect Tvar script across every screen, every device, every helmet HUD. The message read, "You are already dead. You just haven't fallen yet." Then the Dominion's war systems turned against them. Pulse turrets began firing on their own troops. Military databases rewrote themselves, scrambling crucial Dominion intelligence. Artificial night fell over every major city as the human resistance hacked the power grid, plunging entire zones into darkness. And then the real nightmare began. Varkesh personally led an elite strike team into an abandoned human facility deep beneath Siberia. It had been flagged as a possible resistance hideout. What they found changed everything. Deep beneath the Earth's surface, a war machine had been waiting. Tunnels spanning entire continents, filled with weapon caches and hidden launch silos. Experimental human warships in underground dry docks, far more advanced than anything the Dominion had encountered before. Autonomous AI-driven drones designed for surgical warfare. And the worst discovery of all. A holographic war table depicting Earth under Dominion occupation, but with Tvar-controlled zones marked as tactical weak points. This wasn't an insurgency. This was a pre-planned counter-invasion. The moment the Tvar took Earth, they had already lost. The facility's lights flickered as an automated system activated. A deep, mechanical voice echoed through the chamber, an AI interface speaking in fluent Tvar. "You should have never come here." The doors slammed shut behind them. Varkesh turned sharply, drawing his energy blade, just as the shadows around them came to life. Hundreds of human exosoldiers stepped forward from the darkness, their visors glowing in eerie blue. Their armor was unlike anything Varkesh had seen before, sleek, advanced, unidentifiable. The lead soldier tilted his helmet slightly. Then he spoke. "You thought we surrendered?" A pulse rifle word to life. "Now it's our turn?" The last thing Varkesh saw before the darkness swallowed him was the first human warrior raising his weapon, and pulling the trigger. The battle for Earth was over. Now the war for the Dominion itself was about to begin. The war should have been over. The Tvar Dominion had crushed Earth's defenses in a single sweep. Humanity had surrendered without a fight. The planet belonged to the invaders. And yet they were the ones dying in the dark. High Commander Varkesh had seen countless wars, orchestrated planetary subjugations, and reduced entire civilizations to nothing but dust and memory. But he had never seen an enemy like this. The humans weren't fighting back. They were dismantling the occupation, piece by piece, with terrifying precision. And now, trapped inside an underground human facility with no way out, Varkesh realized the truth. Humanity had never surrendered. They had let the Tvar take the planet. And now the trap was closing. The chamber descended into chaos. Varkesh's elite strike team, the deadliest warriors in the Dominion, had trained for every possible scenario. Except this one. The moment the human exosoldiers emerged from the darkness, the air filled with the high-pitched shriek of Dominion plasma rifles and the mechanical hum of human pulse weapons. The first Tvar warrior died instantly, his armor penetrated by something far more advanced than simple ballistic rounds. The second had time to scream before his weapon system shut down, his body freezing in place as something overrode his neural interface. Varkesh barked orders, but it was useless. The humans moved too fast. This wasn't resistance. This wasn't insurgency. This was annihilation. The exo-soldiers fought with perfect synchronization, their every movement calculated and precise. Their armor absorbed direct hits from Dominion plasma weaponry, something no primitive species should have been capable of. It took exactly 47 seconds for Varkesh's strike team to be reduced to one survivor. And as he lay bleeding, pinned to the cold metal floor, he realized something that made his blood run cold. These were not ordinary humans. This was something else. The lead exo-soldier stepped forward, his visor reflecting the dim emergency lights of the chamber. The human didn't speak for a long moment. Then, with a mechanical hiss, his helmet retracted, revealing the face beneath. And Varkesh froze. This was no ordinary soldier. This was a warrior engineered for destruction. The human's eyes were unnatural, a piercing glow of artificial enhancement. His skin was marked with subdermal plating, reinforcing his body beyond normal biological limits. He wasn't just wearing armor. He was the armor. Varkesh had seen bioaugmented warriors before. The Dominion had their own elite cybernetic enforcers, heavily modified to withstand the horrors of war. But these humans? They were beyond anything the Dominion had ever created. And as the soldier spoke, his voice carrying no fear, no hesitation, Varkesh understood exactly why the humans had let them take Earth. "You thought this world was weak," the soldier said. "You have no idea what we are." Then, without another word, he activated something on his gauntlet. A holographic display erupted from the war table, filling the chamber with a planetary-scale projection. It was a map of Earth. But instead of human settlements and Dominion-controlled cities, the entire underground network was illuminated. Massive underground complexes, deep-sealed bunkers, entire hidden cities of human military infrastructure, untouched by the invasion. It was a second Earth, a fortress beneath the surface. And Varkesh realized in that moment that the Dominion had never conquered Earth. They had only taken the bait. The Tvar had believed they controlled the planet. But in truth they had only conquered the surface. Below them, deep within the planet's crust, humanity had built something the Dominion never anticipated. What the Tvar never saw. Self-sufficient military bunkers, powered by geothermal energy. Weapon caches filled with technology that outclassed anything the Dominion had seen. Armies of cybernetically enhanced soldiers trained not for survival, but for revenge. AI-controlled fleets waiting in orbital stealth, hidden beyond the reach of Dominion scanners. The Tvar had thought humanity's surrender was a sign of weakness. Instead, it had been the first phase of a pre-planned war. A war the Tvar were never meant to win. As Varkesh lay there, bleeding and broken, the real war began. From the depths of the planet, humanity rose. All at once, every Dominion-controlled city fell into darkness. Power grids were shut down by an invisible force, human cyber warfare AIs, infiltrating Dominion systems like a virus. Stealth drones decloaked above key Tvar strongholds, launching precision strikes that wiped out command centers in an instant. Genetically augmented human strike teams emerged from hidden bunkers, cutting down Dominion forces with terrifying efficiency. The resistance, which the Tvar had believed to be non-existent, erupted all at once, across every major city. Within hours, the Dominion's occupation force was crumbling. And the worst part? There was nowhere to run. Varkesh was taken prisoner. He wasn't executed, not yet. Instead, he was brought deeper into the underground fortress, past endless corridors of human war technology that defied logic. And then he saw it. The control room of Earth's underground military network. Massive screens displayed Dominion fleet movements, tracking their every move before they even knew they had made them. This wasn't an insurgent hideout. This was a command center. A war machine. And sitting at the center of it all, watching the battle unfold with a calm, calculating expression, was a human unlike any other. He was tall, composed, his face marked with the same enhancements as the exo-soldiers, but more refined. His eyes locked onto Varkesh's, and the High Commander felt something he had never felt before. True fear. The human leaned forward slightly, resting his arms on the war table. "Welcome to the real Earth, High Commander." His voice was calm, controlled, and lethal. "You invaded the wrong planet." Varkesh knew the truth now. The Tvar Dominion was finished. Not just here on Earth. Because if humanity had done this to the Dominion's strongest occupation force, what were they going to do to the rest of the Empire? And as he was dragged away into the depths of the Earth's underground military complex, Varkesh finally understood. The Tvar had come to Earth expecting prey. But they had found something far, far worse. They had found predators. And now humanity was ready to hunt. The screen flickered, showing a final encrypted transmission sent from Earth to an unknown location in deep space. A message in human script. Phase 2 begins. Prepare the fleet. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. Varkesh had spent his life conquering planets. He had crushed rebellions, shattered fleets, and bent entire civilizations to the Dominion's will. His name was feared across 1,000 star systems. Yet now he sat bound in chains beneath the Earth, watching the fall of his own forces play out in real time. The human warlord stood before him, eyes calm and merciless as battle reports flickered across the holographic displays. Cities lost. Battalions wiped out. Supply lines severed. The war was over. Not the war for Earth. The war for the Dominion. And the terrifying part? It had never been a battle. It had been an execution. High above Earth, the remnants of the Tvar occupation fleet scrambled to organize a counteroffensive. The Dominion still controlled thousands of warships, each armed with enough firepower to turn continents into glass. Theoretically, they still held orbital superiority. But then the unthinkable happened. A massive electromagnetic wave surged through the upper atmosphere, shutting down every single Tvar communications relay in orbit. One by one, Dominion warships went dark, their systems completely overridden. Their shields failed. Their navigation controls froze. Their targeting systems turned against them. It was an invisible ambush, the kind of warfare no Dominion strategist had ever seen before. And then from the black void of space they emerged. The Tvar had believed Earth had no spacefaring military. They had been wrong. From behind Earth's shadowed moon, massive human warships decloaked, revealing an armada that had been hiding in plain sight all along. These were not the primitive vessels the Dominion had mocked before the invasion. They were sleek, angular, predatory. Built for speed, stealth, and absolute destruction. Their hulls were lined with black plating that absorbed radar scans, making them invisible to Dominion tracking systems. And as they advanced, their weapons ignited the darkness with silent, calculated fury. The first wave of Dominion battleships were obliterated before they even knew they were under attack. No warnings. No distress signals. Just fire, wreckage, and silence. Back in the underground command center, Varkesh watched in stunned horror as his fleet disintegrated. How? He finally rasped, his voice hoarse. The human warlord, General Adrian Kane, tilted his head slightly as if considering how best to explain. You assumed we were weak, Kane said. You assumed Earth had no real defenses. No space fleet. No countermeasures. He gestured toward the holomap. But that was the greatest illusion of all. Varkesh's throat tightened as he finally saw it. The Dominion's greatest strength, its reliance on overwhelming force and direct military engagements, had made it vulnerable. They had expected a traditional war. They had expected planetary resistance, massed armies, and desperate last stands. They had never anticipated an enemy who would simply disappear. And while the Dominion had spent weeks reinforcing its planetary occupation, the humans had spent years preparing to destroy them from within. This war had never been about holding ground. It had been about waiting for the right moment to strike. And that moment had come. The Dominion had always relied on sheer numerical superiority to overwhelm their enemies. But as more warships fell, it became clear that the humans were not fighting with numbers. They were fighting with something else. An enemy that Tvar couldn't see or comprehend. Because while Dominion officers scrambled to regain control of their fleet, something else was moving through their systems. A virus. No, worse than a virus. A self-learning AI, spreading like wildfire through every Dominion warship, rewriting their security protocols in real time. It wasn't just shutting down their weapons. It was turning them against each other. Tvar battleships began firing on their own allies. Fleet command signals were overridden, forcing entire formations to drift helplessly into enemy crossfire. Troop transports were locked out of their own navigation systems, sending them plummeting into Earth's gravity well. The Dominion wasn't just losing. It was being ripped apart from the inside. And the terrifying part? The humans had never even boarded their ships. Section 5. The Fall of the Tvar Fleet. From the moon's dark side, Earth's hidden fleet moved in for the kill. The final phase of the battle unfolded in absolute, horrifying silence. Human warships executed surgical strikes, eliminating every remaining Tvar stronghold in orbit. Assault drones infiltrated Dominion capital ships, slicing through their hulls like liquid fire. Humanity's experimental weapons, energy-based railguns and quantum lances, cut through the Dominion's strongest defenses with terrifying ease. By the time the last of our warship fell, the battle had lasted only 42 minutes. A total, devastating slaughter. And the Dominion had never even fired a coordinated counterattack. Section 6. The message to the Dominion homeworld. Back on Earth, Varkesh trembled with silent rage. He had led the strongest fleet in the Dominion's history. And yet, it had been dismantled like an afterthought. He watched as Kane turned to his communications officer. "Send the transmission," Kane ordered. A few seconds later, a signal pulsed from Earth's surface, broadcasting in Dominion standard frequencies. Across the Dominion's core worlds, every major fleet command center received the same message. A simple, chilling declaration. Earth was a trap. The fleet is gone. We are coming. Section 7. The dawn of humanity's retaliation. Varkesh's claws curled into fists. He had underestimated Earth. And now his people would pay the price. The Tvar Dominion had existed for centuries, expanding relentlessly, enslaving world after world. But now, for the first time in its history, the Empire was the one being hunted. And humanity was not offering terms. "You don't understand what you've done, Kane," Varkesh rasped. Kane's expression remained unreadable. "Oh, I understand," he said quietly. "Perfectly." He turned away, gazing at the war table where a new set of coordinates appeared. The Dominion's throne world. A single red marker flashed ominously over its capital city. Kane's voice was quiet but filled with finality. "You thought you conquered us?" His eyes flickered with something dark. "Now it's our turn?" Final scene. The beginning of the end. Far beyond Earth, deep in the heart of the Dominion's capital system, alarms blared through the throne world's war chambers. High lords and strategists scrambled for answers, unable to comprehend what had happened. Then a new sensor reading appeared on their scanners. An unknown fleet had just entered the system, and it was headed straight for them. The war wasn't just coming to the Dominion. It was already here. Cliffhanger, the last war begins. The human fleet accelerated, their warships gleaming against the darkness. And across every occupied world, enslaved species watched the sky. For the first time in history, they saw hope. Across the stars, the Dominion had ruled with absolute power. World after world had fallen to their war machine, their fleets crushing any species foolish enough to resist. They had turned entire planets into slave colonies, stripping them of resources, erasing their cultures and rewriting history to make it seem as if the Tvar had always been the rightful rulers of the galaxy. But now, for the first time in their long history, they were the ones being invaded. The human fleet had arrived at the Dominion's throne world, and there would be no negotiations. No diplomacy. No offers of surrender. Earth had been a trap. The Dominion had stepped into it. And now humanity was here to finish the war. The throne world of Tvar Prime had never been attacked. It was the center of the Dominion's empire, protected by the largest fleet ever assembled. An impenetrable fortress world with planetary shields strong enough to withstand the detonation of an entire star. Or at least that's what they had believed. Until the human fleet arrived. They didn't come in a typical formation. They didn't engage in grand displays of military might. Instead, they arrived in complete silence. The first sign of their presence was not the blare of Dominion alarms, but the sudden loss of power across the capital city. One by one, the Dominion's planetary defenses shut down. Orbital defense platforms flickered offline. Fleet command relays collapsed, turning warships into drifting wrecks. AI-controlled turrets stopped responding to Tvar commands, redirecting their targeting systems toward their own ships. The human AI had already infiltrated their systems. The Dominion's throne world had already lost control of its own military. And then the real attack began. High Lord Zarek, Supreme Commander of the Dominion, stood in the war chamber of the Imperial Citadel, his claws digging into the armrest of his throne as reports flooded in. His warriors, his best warriors, were in complete disarray. "Where are the humans attacking from?" he demanded. His intelligence officer, Shirtal, struggled to form an answer. "Everywhere, my lord." Zarek's eyes narrowed. That was impossible. No empire, not even the Dominion, had the firepower to attack on all fronts simultaneously. And yet, the human fleet had already surrounded Tvar Prime. Precision orbital strikes slammed into key military installations, silencing command centers before the Dominion could even issue orders. Ground forces deployed in targeted drops, landing directly in the streets of the capital, bypassing planetary defenses entirely. Human cyber warfare AIs hijacked Dominion warships, turning their most powerful battleships against them. The This was not an invasion. This was a systematic dismantling of an empire. The Tvar were not fighting a war anymore. They were dying. The Dominion had conquered over 1,000 species. They had enslaved entire populations, forcing them into brutal labor camps, stripping their planets of all natural resources and erasing their histories. But now the oppressed were rising, and humanity had set them free. Across the Dominion's empire, massive revolts erupted. For centuries, these species had been too afraid to resist. But now they saw something they had never seen before. They saw the Tvar losing. They saw hope. On the industrial world of Veklos 9, enslaved workers overthrew their overseers and took control of the weapons factories. On the desert colony of Skarvek, the native population stormed the Dominion barracks, slaughtering their former masters. On the slave world of Yulkar, prisoners rose up, using stolen Dominion weapons to seize the shipyards and turn them over to humanity. The Tvar Empire wasn't just collapsing from the outside. It was imploding from within. And the humans had planned it all. There was only one hope left for the Dominion. If they could rally their remaining fleet, they might still be able to hold the capital long enough to evacuate their ruling caste. But the moment they assembled their warships in low orbit, the humans sprung their final trap. The Dominion fleet prepared for open battle, charging their weapons ready to fight to the last breath. Then, every single Tvar warship shut down simultaneously. The human cyber warfare AI had fully infiltrated their command network. The Dominion's warships, some of the largest ever built in the galaxy, were now nothing more than floating coffins. And humanity destroyed them one by one. The once proud fleet of the Dominion was erased in a matter of minutes. There would be no survivors. With the capital under siege, Supreme Commander Zarek had only one option left: escape. He and the High Lords of the Dominion fled into the depths of the Imperial Citadel, hoping to reach the emergency evacuation tunnels. But as they descended into the bunker, the lights flickered. And a voice echoed through the chamber. A voice speaking in perfect Tvar. "You thought you could run?" Zarek froze, his blood turning to ice. From the shadows they emerged. Human soldiers. No, not just soldiers. Executors. They moved with inhuman speed, their weapons silent and efficient, their visors glowing in the darkness. Zarek and his ruling class never even had a chance to draw their weapons. Within seconds they were all dead. The Dominion had no leadership anymore. The war was over. The Tvar Dominion was no more. And the galaxy needed to know. A transmission was sent from the ruins of the Dominion's capital city, broadcasting on every channel across the known universe. The screen flickered. And then the face of General Adrian Kane appeared. His expression was calm, unyielding, absolute. His words would be remembered for generations. "This is a message to all who once feared the Dominion. You are free." He leaned forward, his voice growing colder. "And to those who still believe they can conquer Earth, know this." His eyes glowed in the dim light. "You are next." The Dominion had been the largest empire in the galaxy. Now it was nothing more than a memory. Humanity, the species they had once dismissed as primitive, had torn it apart in mere days. And now, across the stars, a new power had risen. The era of the Tvar was over. The era of humanity had begun. In the ruins of the Dominion's capital, a strange signal pulsed in deep space. A transmission sent from beyond known space. The humans received it. And on the screen a single chilling message appeared. "You have been noticed. Prepare." For the first time since the war began, humanity wondered if they had just awakened something far worse. The Dominion was gone. 1,000-year-old empire, built on blood, conquest, and fear, had been reduced to nothing in a matter of days. The Tvar, once the galaxy's supreme power, had fallen without a single successful counterattack. But in the silence that followed their destruction, something else stirred. As the last Dominion warships burned in the void, a transmission was received. Not from the Tvar. Not from any known power. It came from somewhere beyond the galactic core, from a system that should not have existed. And it carried a simple, chilling message. "You have been noticed. Prepare." The news spread like wildfire. Across the stars, entire civilizations watched in disbelief as the unthinkable became reality. The Dominion, the most powerful empire in history, had been erased. And the ones who destroyed them were the same species the Dominion had mocked as primitive. The humans, a race barely known to the wider galactic community, had just rewritten history. The fallout was immediate. Allied species of the Dominion collapsed into chaos. Without the Dominion's control, dozens of smaller empires and client states fell into disarray. Former slave worlds rose in violent rebellion, executing their former overlords. Entire planetary governments collapsed overnight, unsure of who would seize power next. Independent civilizations debate their next move. Some saw humanity as a liberator, a force that had finally ended the Tvar's tyranny. Others saw something far more terrifying. If humanity could destroy the Dominion in mere days, who could stop them from doing it again? And so, the great galactic debate began. Should humanity be welcomed? Or should it be stopped, before it became the next unstoppable empire? While the galaxy struggled to process the fall of the Tvar, humanity was already moving forward. The war had ended, but Earth's forces had no intention of stopping. Phase 2 begins, the occupation of the former Dominion. The entirety of former Tvar space was now under human military control. Massive human fleets patrolled the newly conquered territories, enforcing order with terrifying precision. The remnants of the Tvar military were hunted down, their officers executed on sight. The Tvar had enslaved dozens of species. Now they were the ones in chains. But humanity's conquest wasn't just about vengeance. It was about proving a point. A broadcast to the galaxy. From the capital of the fallen Dominion, General Adrian Kane made his second address to the galaxy. His message was simple. The age of tyrants is over. Earth will not rule as the Dominion did. But make no mistake, any empire that follows their path will meet the same fate. It was not a declaration of peace. It was a warning. For centuries, the Tvar had been considered the greatest threat to galactic stability. But with their fall, new players emerged from the shadows. The Council of Nine convenes. In the core worlds, where the oldest and most powerful civilizations resided, an emergency meeting was held. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Council of Nine, the true rulers of the galaxy, came together. The Vietharies Ascendancy, an ancient race of bioengineered beings. The Zyphar Collective, a machine intelligence with dominion over entire star clusters. The Eldrin Theocracy, a spiritual empire that had remained neutral for centuries. These were the powers that had existed long before the Tvar. And now they had a single question to answer. What should be done about Earth? For millennia, the Council had silently controlled the balance of power, ensuring no one species ever became too strong. But humanity had upset that balance in ways they had never anticipated. The humans were too aggressive, too unpredictable, too advanced, and worst of all, they were still evolving. For the first time in history, the Council saw a species that could truly threaten them. And they made their decision. Humanity had to be stopped. The silent war begins. The Council of Nine did not declare open war on Earth. They weren't foolish enough to repeat the Tvar's mistake. Instead, they worked in the shadows. Assassination attempts were made on Earth's leadership. False flag operations were launched, framing humanity for atrocities they never committed. Saboteurs infiltrated Earth's colonies, attempting to destroy their newfound power from within. But what the Council failed to realize was that humanity had been expecting this. The war with the Tvar had only been the beginning. Earth had already begun preparing for the next threat. As humanity fought off secret attacks from the Council, something far worse was happening. The signal from the void. Scientists on Earth's outermost colonies detected a new transmission. At first it was dismissed as background radiation. But then it repeated. A pulse of energy, coming from a system that did not exist on any galactic maps. And with each pulse it grew stronger. Someone, or something, was awakening. Deep in the ruins of the Tvar Dominion, a hidden archive was discovered. A sealed vault untouched for thousands of years. Inside, Earth's top scientists uncovered something horrifying. The Tvar had not been the true rulers of the galaxy. They had been servants. A conquered species, forced to expand an empire on behalf of their true masters. And now that they were gone, those masters were returning. A final message was left behind by the last Tvar Emperor before the Dominion's fall. Read. We were never the true threat. We were never the conquerors. We were only the first wave. And as the final transmission from deep space reached Earth, a new message appeared on every human screen. A message in no known language. But its meaning was clear. You should not have interfered. We are coming. For the first time since the fall of the Dominion, General Kane stood in silence. The war with the Tvar had been brutal. The war with the Council of Nine was inevitable. But this was something else. Something older. Something that even the Dominion had feared. And for the first time, Kane spoke the words no human had dared to say. We might have just made a mistake. Far beyond the galactic core, something stirred in the darkness. And for the first time in its ancient existence, it turned its attention toward Earth. The screen faded to black. And across the stars, something whispered from the void. Humanity was never supposed to win. Now we will show you why. End of Book 1. Next, the war humanity was never meant to fight.